All right, it's 10:06 and time for the Saturday special with Michael Zwerling.
Griffin Queener.
Yes.
May I ask you a personal question?
Sure, go for it.
Do you know where the whereabouts of the surprise, greeting for me that was done by the staff that no one obviously told you about? Obviously, didn't tell me because it was. Remember last Saturday was the 68th anniversary of my birth.
Yeah.
And no one said anything here except me. And Rosie said when she got back, she says, "Did you like what we did for you, boss?" And I said, "What?" And they said, "You mean they did all that work and you didn't hear it?"
I guess so.
So that's what. Anyhow, do you know where it is?
I can try and look for it here.
Okay, why don't you try and look for it, and that'll. Now, is that a personal enough question? No, I like to ask better.
Okay.
Do you think that you're a recent, UCSC grad, right?
No, I'm not.
Oh.
I'm going right now to Cabrillo. That's I'm currently enrolled in Cabrillo College.
Oh, I'm sorry, Griffin Queener.
No, it's all right.
It's all right. It's probably. Everybody I know says Cabrillo is a better place. You get a better quality education there, and you don't get indoctrinated.
Yeah,
right? And that's the topic of this talk. So here's the personal question for the day. Do you think universities should be institutions of higher education or higher indoctrination?
I mean, education is always good. I don't know how I could even suggest that they should indoctrinate people. That seems like a pretty easy question to answer.
Okay, do we have a guest and a half for our audience today?
Do we?
We do.
Oh, wow.
It's Dr. John Ellis. Yeah, he's a former professor at UC Santa Cruz, and he's a really big shot in the world of education. Well, he'll tell us about that. But in the meantime, Dave Michaels.
Good morning, MZ. How are you?
Good. You're going to be at the Dave Cave.
I'm going to be out at the Dave Cave. Yeah, I just want to take some time to remind people about some of the things that I don't advertise so much out there at the Dave Cave. And that is King Calcium has become one of my favorite products, MZ. And that's because this allows you to substitute, you can substitute this for the OsteoFX. I'm always recommending OsteoFX, Tangy Tangerine, and Glucogel, right? If you have any body aches or pains, this stuff is amazing. You will not believe it. Some people, though, MZ, cannot stand the taste of OsteoFX for whatever reason. There's nothing wrong with the OsteoFX. There's something wrong with their taste buds.
Oh,
most likely.
I was going to say there's nothing wrong, but there's something wrong with the people. But you weren't the taste buds within the people,
right?
That's okay.
King Calcium is a great supplement. It is a great substitute, MC. It tastes, has a slight berry flavor to it, so you don't taste that.
I've had it. It's delicious.
It's delicious, yeah.
And my sister Regina, it's one of her favorite products too. She's always saying, "Do you have any King Calcium?"
It's great stuff.
She runs out of it.
It's great stuff.
She takes 20 at a time.
These things you have to have. These things will take a little bit more than one bottle to last you a month. But we have great deals out at the Dave Cave, and right now is a perfect time to stop by and pick up King Calcium because we have a lot of it. And it's a great substitute, like I said. And we also have KSCO gear and K Zwerling books as well.
Wow.
Yes. We've got all that at the
great.
Dave Cave. Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's the picture. That picture, yeah. John, our guest today, knows what I'm talking about here. Did you find it, Griffin Queener?
No, it's definitely not clearly labeled if it is in here, so.
Nothing is clearly labeled in there.
Yeah.
Ever. Nothing. Oh, well.
I guess I'm just not going to get to hear all the work that went into. That happens an awful lot here. I come in here and I ask. Never mind. We have the best production guy on the West Coast. The smartest man in the world actually told me that, Dr. Bill Wattenberg, before he moved to heaven. And but you can't just have the best production guy on the West Coast do your commercial and then not specifically give instructions about what to do with it. You can't assume that he's going to know. And that's been the problem in the past. You will keep looking, Griffin Queener, and maybe we can get, maybe we can contact Billy because he's the guy who made it. Because it seems like such a shame. Anyhow, never mind. I'll stop whimpering. Is that it? Dave, are there some other things that you want to
No, that's about it. That's all I want to let people know. I'll be out at the Dave Cave until 2. We've got fantastic deals. We've got Arthrodex, Glucogel, Tangy Tangerine, OsteoFX, and your King Calcium, of course, and your K Zwerling books and KSCO Flight 1080 gear.
Wow. Okay. I'm going to start the show officially, and I have to go do something for a few minutes.
All right.
I've been called away on assignment, and I'm so happy that you're here so that you could step into my chair. But if Griffin Queener happens to, find what we're looking for, we'll don't play it until I can come back from.
Of course.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Here we go. 3, 2, 1.
Good morning. A brighter day is here. Good morning. May we bring you cheer.
We've got time, we've got tunes, we've got time, tunes, and temperature.
Get up and go, it's today, on KSCO Radio.
Welcome aboard. You're listening to AM 1080 KSCO Santa Cruz. A Saturday special with your host MZ is about to begin. We have a very special guest today with a great topic. This is one of my favorite topics to discuss, and I hope it's going to be a lot of fun. I hope you join in at 479-1080. That's 479-1080, area code 831.
Good morning. Now stay right here on KSCO Radio.
You hear this very magical sounding music? Go ahead and put your headphones on there. There you go. Now do you hear the magical music in the background?
I do.
That means that we have a very special guest we're about to share some airtime with a very special guest, so keep it tuned in. We're about to begin. Okay, now this edition of the Saturday Special is going to start just a little bit differently because MZ had to take off for a little while, but he'll be back in just a few minutes. So in the meantime, I'm going to keep the ball rolling with his guest, John, is it Ellis?
Ellis.
John Ellis, okay. Now, he said that you were going to talk about indoctrination and specifically or particularly in and on college campuses. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. Go ahead and explain how this conversation is going to evolve or what we're going to talk about. And then I want to talk about when does it begin, because it certainly doesn't begin in college. I can give you examples of when it begins much, much earlier than that, because I have two kids. One of them is 20, the other is 11, and it starts way, way earlier than college, man. It starts early, and it's actually a very scary thing. So tell me your ideas about indoctrination on college.
You're right that it begins early, but remember, who trains those teachers, those high school teachers? They get trained on college campuses. So in a way, it does all start on the campus, on the college campus.
All
that's where the people come from who get trained in being teachers, and they transmit to the high schools, to the elementary schools, the college campus culture. Now the real problem is that we have now a one-party campus. It took about 50 years to develop. Right, about 50 years ago, you go back. All the surveys showed that there were about 2 left-of-center professors for 1 right-of-center professor. Now, that's enough to have a healthy debate, right? I mean, you got both sides well represented, so both sides kept each other healthy. Now, over the years, I mean, the next 30 years, that 2-to-1 became 5-to-1.
That's what it currently is now?
No, it's much worse than that.
Wow.
But that's by turn of the 20th, 21st century, it's 5. In the next 6 or 7 years, it became 8. Since then, the last 10 years, it's become more like 12 to 14. In other words, it's overwhelming now. And so you have, basically now you have a one-party campus. There are very, very few conservative professors. Most of them are not too happy about speaking up because it's very uncomfortable.
Right.
And causes huge problems. It causes huge problems for the quality of teaching. It causes problems for just ordinary everyday life on campus. I mean, conservative ideas are just not expressed.
Right.
But the really bad thing is that the campuses don't recognize that it's a problem. So, I mean, you can bet we've got a new chancellor at UCSC.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you can bet that as she sizes up what's going on the campus and what problems she has to face and correct and so on, what ideas she has to develop, you can bet she's thinking about diversity. She's thinking about whether the budget is adequate. But I think that this problem of the one-party campus, that's not something that college administrators recognize.
Okay, so let's pause right there. Do they not recognize it, or do they just not accept it as being an unhealthy thing? I mean, because it's hard to imagine that they don't recognize it. These people are smart. They must recognize it and just say, well, this is the way it should be. This is the way we should work towards this, whatever goal they have in common. They can't be that dumb. They can't be that blind.
It's very, very difficult to understand.
It's manipulative.
It's very difficult to understand their mental set. Anyone, you and I, everyone can recognize it's a very unhealthy situation.
Right, and why can't they? They must. I mean, they're intelligent.
Well, all I can tell you is that when you try and raise the issue with them, you just get a brick wall.
Oh, yeah, or they insult you.
Now, whether it's because they like it that way, or because they're scared stiff of their radical faculty and don't want to rock the boat, it's impossible to say in individual cases. All I can tell you is that in all the times I've raised the issue on campus, or I've seen other people raise the issue, there's a brick wall.
It gets shut down.
It's just shut down. It's obviously unhealthy. It's terribly bad. There was a study done in 2018 by Gallup. They found that no other institution had seen such a drop in public confidence as higher education in the last 3-4 years. So in other words, in that time, whatever other institution you look at, the public lost confidence in higher education faster in that time than any other institution in the country. Now, you'd think that that's a bad situation. You'd think that administrators on campuses would recognize that's a terrible thing. The public is starting to lose confidence. You'd think they'd try and do something about it. No. In fact, they avoid the issue, and if you raise that issue with them, they do all they can to wriggle out of it.
I mean, is competition one way to increase the likelihood of finding a campus that is more diverse in their thought?
Well, it would be.
Because where are you going to go if you don't want to go to the UC system, or you don't want to go there to the university system? Where do you go?
I know. Well, look, there are one or two places that are slightly better than others. I mean, Hillsdale College is well known for being first rate, but that's a very tiny college. I mean, we're talking about, very large numbers of students nationwide. And no, they don't really have anywhere to go. There are still some good people, and the smart students try and find their way to those people. But that doesn't solve the overall campus problem. I mean, it doesn't solve the overall campus problem of the fact that you can't discuss political matters intelligently, calmly, rationally on campus if they involve any kind of challenge to the orthodoxy that exists.
You brought up something that was I hadn't thought of. I was thinking that this begins much younger in elementary school. In the case of my son and my daughter, they both have these mock elections in which the teacher encourages them to vote one way. So I always thought that the indoctrination started there, but you brought up a good point, and it starts with the teachers that go back to teach this to the students, right? That's where the indoctrination starts, is on the college campuses. Yep. Well, if it started 50 years ago, who taught these guys these values? Where did they come from? I mean, you have these people who are going through the universities, and liberalism is in its infancy, right? And it's just barely starting up for the most part. World War II was a pretty conservative generation. What happened between them and what we have now? How did this begin? Where did the kids go wrong? Who screwed up? Who raised the wrong kids?
You raised the absolutely basic question. Where did this come from? How do we get from the 60s, say, early 60s, when American universities were the envy of the world, to now when they're one-party radical left factories, basically? How do we get there? Well, it's a complicated business. I mean, over that time, you've seen the proportion of leftist professors steadily increasing. So in other words, some group wanted this to happen.
Right, right.
And I think what really happened was this, that about 69, the radical left decided that it was losing elections everywhere it went, and it couldn't rely on elections, so it decided to try and take over the universities. It was a long process. It was one that no one could have predicted the success of. I mean, I was there in the 60s. Mm-hmm. When I saw the Students for a Democratic Society and their program, I just laughed. Everybody else did. Mm-hmm. And in fact, their program has been wildly successful.
I would think that they must have. How did they do this? Did they appeal to the emotions? What was appealing about that movement? Well, because if you get people invested in their emotions, you get people to invest their emotions in some kind of political movement. They're a bunch of suckers.
Well, they had some strokes of very, very good luck. Look, I mean, first of all, the 60s, remember, the Vietnam War. Mm-hmm. So in the Vietnam War era, students were the ones who were facing the draft. And the Vietnam War was, whatever you think about what happened in the Vietnam War, the fact of the matter is the colleges became very unhappy about mm-hmm. it. I mean, and so opinion on campuses drifted sharply left as the protests against what most people thought was foolish and evil government policy. Those protests sort of went rampant. Now, imagine we've got a situation then on campuses in the late 60s where most people are angry about what's going on, and leftism is on the increase because of that, right or wrongly. Mm. Now, at exactly that time, now this was the stroke of very bad luck for all of us, at exactly that time, a massive expansion of the universities began. So between 65 and 75, enrollment at public institutions of higher education more than doubled, right? So 65, something like 3.9 million students. By 75, that number had increased to 8.3 million students, right? So, I mean, that's a huge expansion. I mean, in other words, we're building more, in that 10-year period, we're building more colleges than existed in 65. Number of professors we need by 75 is greater than twice the number that we had. In other words, between 65 and 75, the country needs to hire more professors than already existed in 65. Mm-hmm. Now, so this huge expansion takes place when? It takes place at exactly the moment when students and graduate students are angry with their government about the Vietnam War.
Right.
It's a massive shot in the arm for campus radicalism to be able to recruit at that side. And so in come a huge number of people who view their mission in life as to redress an evil government policy. So in other words, they don't have the normal academics' motivation of going to further knowledge,
right.
Going to achieve greater understanding of the world, going into campus to teach kids how to think. No, they come in thinking their mission is to convert people to a different political value system.
And that's why I was asking, what was so appealing about their message? Because it seems like this message would be perfect to preach to kids, young people that had the Vietnam War as a background, and it seems like it would put them in a sort of moral superiority and say, hey, we're better, we're enlightened, we know the war is bad, and it just kind of snowballed from there.
Yeah. Well, once you had, I mean, go back to 65, you got professors are people who specialize in knowledge, mm-hmm. the production of knowledge, the research into their chosen fields. They carried on, they pushed back the frontiers of knowledge themselves in their own research, and they taught students how to think in a productive way, how to advance knowledge. Now, that's 65. All professors pretty well are like that. The overwhelming majority are like that. Now, by 75, about half of them are totally different. Their attitude is not, we're going to teach people how to think. Their attitude is, we're going to teach people what to think. That's very different. And so by 75, because of that massive expansion of the universities, you have suddenly dumped on the university campuses professors who are quite unlike their predecessors. And that's where it starts. And from 75 onwards, you have a slow, those people are powerful enough that they keep on recruiting more and more people like themselves until you now have a situation where they run the campuses, those people.
So it is this like philosophy that's behind it, right? Because I'm thinking old school, and I use that term old school, professors that were from the 50s or 40s or maybe even further back, they would all, I think, no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on, encourage a healthy debate.
Yeah.
But that is no longer encouraged. So it's not just what happened to the thinking. What is the thinking? What is the change in thinking? What is it?
The change in thinking is that there's professors now are more likely to think that they know what's the right way to run the world, and they're going to make sure their students understand that.
Do they look down upon professors in the past as maybe not being as well informed? I mean, technology has let us, get more information and become more informed about lots of things.
Well, I don't know. I don't know whether they look down on them. They're just not interested in that kind of attitude. Their main concern is to teach people how to think. In other words, social justice now is the watchword on university campuses. Not teaching people how to analyze problems, but how to channel your belief system into what is thought to be the right direction. So if you have, you mentioned the word debate, and then the next word you said was healthy debate.
Right.
Well, that's right. Debate is healthy. Absence of debate is not healthy. So you have a situation now where everyone thinks pretty much the same thing, and that is a recipe eventually for madness. Because the only thing that keeps you healthy intellectually is the discipline of having to confront people who disagree with you. That's going to refine what you think. It means the challenge is you're going to be more careful.
Right.
You're going to be more thoughtful. You're going to be more productive. You're going to have to think what really works and what doesn't work. Because if I say something that's stupid, my opposition is going to pounce on me. So your opposition, your intellectual opposition, keeps you on the straight and narrow. It keeps you healthy. It purges you of foolishness and makes you focus on what you can really defend.
How is that different than what some people would say happens now in pop culture and social media when somebody says something that's frowned upon by the college elite, and then they call it the cancel culture, right?
Yeah.
How does that?
Well, essentially, argument now consists in throwing insults at each other. I mean, racist, sexist, homophobe.
But people will say that you better not make those comments anymore because we'll attack you from all sides and keep you from saying dumb things.
Well, that's keep you from saying things we disagree with.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Okay, so let's go back to the college campuses. How is this manifesting itself? What are some of the issues on college campus that are becoming big? I'm thinking global warming, which is very rarely challenged. That seems to be a big thing on campus. What are some of the problems that you see happening on campus that are becoming bigger? Well,
large numbers of issues where debate is now discouraged. I mean, for example, take colonialism, for example. Now, colonialism is just a really bad word. So a colleague of mine in Oregon wrote an article on the pluses and minuses of colonialism. This is standard academic stuff.
Sure.
The colonialists brought certain advanced notions to less advanced cultures. On the other hand, they also exploited them. So this guy, he produced an article which, put the pros and the cons there. Well, he was denounced by a petition got up by thousands of people in academia. And what they couldn't stand was he said anything at all that was positive. So in other words, you can only say it was evil. You can't talk about the fact that it might be one of the mechanisms whereby advanced cultures spread their characteristics.
Right.
Which, the wheel, for example, was a benefit to other cultures. I mean, whoever invented the wheel did everybody a favor.
Sure.
Now, you can bet that the people who invent things and get an advance in their cultural arrangements, they're probably going to be a bit stronger than adjacent cultures for a while.
That's just the way it is.
That's just the way it is.
Right.
But that's a fact of life. But anyway, on campus right now, you simply cannot discuss in a rational way the pros and the cons of what happened under colonial rule. And if you try to say that what happened to some cultures that decolonized, like some African countries like Zimbabwe, for example, became hellholes afterwards, my goodness me, you mustn't say that. So that's just one example. Global warming, you're right about global warming is another. I mean, you cannot challenge that on campus. Basically, what you should be seeing on campus is a rational discussion of just how the fluctuations in climate relate to the possibility of global warming. I mean, are the things people point to in global warming, can they be accounted for by normal fluctuations or not? What are the arguments for and against? Well, the whole point of a debate is you have two sides.
Right.
And in the debate between the two sides, you gradually winnow out ideas that don't work, and you focus on more and more on ideas that do work. That's now very difficult to do with some topics on college campuses.
And it seems like the college campuses would be the place to encourage this thing. If I was a professor and I was running a class and the topic of global warming came up, I would encourage half the class to defend it and half the class to discourage, to make the opposite argument.
Exactly.
I mean, that's a healthy debate. Just humor me, right? Even if you don't believe it, just put yourself in their shoes, try to understand their points.
Yes.
And this is good. Maybe they're full of junk. Maybe they have a point, but you won't know unless you exchange ideas and have a healthy debate, which is just dying out.
It's the absence of that healthy debate that's the real problem.
John Ellis is our guest today here on the Saturday Special. I am going to head out back to the Dave Cave. MZ just walked back in. MZ, I want to remind people that they can stop by and pick up items like this, the Citra D spray, vitamin D spray, 1,000 units per spray.
Can I spray it in my mouth?
That's the only one we have for sale.
Oh.
You can buy it.
Okay, I'll buy it. No. No, I actually have one already. So, thank you, Dave Michaels, and thank you, Griffin Queener, and thank you, Dr. John Ellis here. I'm sure it was a rip-roaring, interesting, fascinating program up until now, and unfortunately, what I had to do did not enable me to listen to any of it. So, John, tell me, you think things are getting better? Are things getting fairer? Are more people, rising up and complaining that, hey, this UC Santa Cruz and other colleges and universities should be institutions of education, of learning, rather than of indoctrination? And that's the word that founding chancellor Dean McHenry used on this radio station during an interview that I did with him in 1993. Yeah. And it blew me away. Yeah. I have a recording of that somewhere.
No, Dean at the end of his life recognized something was going wrong. Yeah. It's very sad because he did something wonderful. He founded the UCSC campus in '65. No, things are getting worse all the time.
Okay. Why is that?
Well, it's very simple.
And I'm sorry if you're going over this again. If since I didn't get the chance to listen, maybe you've done this already.
We didn't touch on this. No.
Okay.
They're getting worse all the time for one very simple reason, that the ratio of left of center faculty to right of center faculty is still rising. It's been, I was explaining to Dave, 2 to 1 left to right in 1969, 5 to 1 by 1999, by about 2007, 2008, 8 to 1.
Where do these numbers come from?
Oh, surveys by various people. I mean, surveys of professors' voting habits, surveys of interviews with professors. There are different kinds. They all have their own limitations. I mean, people don't necessarily answer honestly when you talk to them personally. And when you come to voting, you've got to deal with the fact that some people don't vote. But nevertheless, if you take all these things together over time, a lot of different surveys with different methodologies, they add up to something that no one really doubts, which is that we now have gone from that 2 to 1 of 50 years ago to something like 12 to 14, something like, and it's still...
Wow, that's even more than my mom. That was a favorite topic of her commentaries.
Yeah.
Back then, I remember she was saying 85% left professors and...
It's still going up, and the reason is this. Someone did a survey of the Berkeley faculty in about 2006, and they found that the ratio of left to right among the older generation, that's full professors, that's the mature scholars, was about 8 to 1. But among the assistant professors and associate professors, those are the guys recently hired, it was something like about 50 to 1. Now think about it. If the last 10 years of hiring is produced a 50 to 1 ratio, then what you've got facing you is that's going on right now.
How I think it should be stopped. You think it should be stopped. How can it be stopped, and why can't it be stopped, or why won't it be stopped?
Well, I'll tell you, as you know, we've attempted to raise this with the University of California, and every time we just get a brick wall. No one wants to deal with it. And I think the answer is that even those people that think that something should be done shrink from the chaos that would result if they tried to stop it.
Is it akin to someone wearing a Make America Great Again hat in Santa Cruz or in San Francisco? I have personal experience with that. And I keep running into people all around who somehow let me know that they're a Trump supporter, but I don't dare let that information out. I'm confiding in you. Please don't blow my cover, MZ.
Well, that does have similarities on the campus. I mean, there are times when people speak up, and then what happens is that 3 or 4 people come to them privately and say, "I really agree with you, but I daren't say so." That does happen. It does happen.
Right. Are you familiar with, of course you're familiar with the National Review, yes?
Yeah.
And are you familiar with a recent article written in the National Review, Coming Home from College?
No, I haven't seen that.
Oh, okay. Well, let's see. When you said, I don't like to read, but I'm going to read a little bit of this because I think you're going to like, I think the audience is going to enjoy it. It's from the National Review, November 16th, 2019. So, it's current, pretty much current, right? When you send your child to college, you are playing Russian roulette with their character. Every year, many thousands of American parents find that the son or daughter that they sent to college has been transformed by college into a leftist. For left-wing parents, this may be a blessing. But for parents who are not leftist, not to mention those who are conservative, it is often painfully jolting. It's jolting because their beloved child now holds America in contempt, prefers socialism to capitalism, regards all white people and police as racist, believes the Bible, Christianity, and Judaism are not only nonsense, but dangerous nonsense, no longer believes that men and women are inherently different, or even that male and female objectivity exist, is uninterested in getting married or having children, believes the President of the United States is a fascist, as are all those who voted for him, and supports the suppression of speech that he or she regards as, quote, hate speech, unquote. While this is music to the ears of left-wing parents, most traditionally liberal parents will not be all that happy with this transformation. Unlike leftists, most liberals do love America and think that, despite its flaws, it's worthy of respect. They do not believe male and female are subjective categories, and they believe in free speech, even for hate speech. For conservative parents, the transformation is far worse. Nightmare is not too strong a description. Not only does their child hold everything they cherish in contempt, but their child who loved and respected them a year or two before now holds them in contempt. It's a nightmare for another reason. Young people who are transformed into leftists almost always become less kind, less happy, and more angry. It's hard to imagine that the opposite could occur. That is, that a young person could buy into all the left-wing views described above and become a sweeter human being. It is a sad rule of life that whatever the left touches, it ruins. Music, art, literature, religion, late-night TV, the Academy Awards, sports, economies, the family structure, the Boy Scouts, and race relations are just a few examples. It also ruins people, their character, and their happiness. How could it not? One of the prerequisites of good character, as well as of happiness, is gratitude, and leftism is rooted in ingratitude. If you are grateful to be an American, you are by definition not a leftist. If you are, for example, a black who is grateful to be an American, you are a traitor to your race, an Uncle Tom. If you are a woman who is grateful to be an American, you are a traitor to your gender. Feminist icons Gloria Steinem once called female Republican Senator Kay Bailey Hutchinson a, quote, female impersonator because a real woman cannot be a conservative. In addition, the left drills into every non-white and every woman the idea that they are victims, and people who see themselves as victims are ungrateful and angry, two traits that always make a person meaner. Every parent whose child came home from college or increasingly high school, a leftist should be asked, is your daughter or son happier as a result of becoming a leftist, or is he or she kinder, more tolerant, more respectful? So it is not only institutions that the left ruins, but also the character of its adherents. Where are the prominent conservative equivalents of Robert De Niro shouting bleep Trump at award ceremonies? Or of Sarah Silverman tweeting to the President of the United States, I'm just going to go with bleep you, and also add that you are a smelly penis hole with balls that touch water. Eat bleep, you greedy bleep. Of Representative Rashida however you say that name, telling supporters, among whom were children, we're going to impeach the mother bleeper. Every American should watch how a group of 10-year-old girls recently treated 85-year-old California Senator Dianne Feinstein. Being indoctrinated into leftism apparently permitted them to treat a U.S. senator, not to mention a woman 75 years older than them, with contempt. It is inconceivable that a group of 10-year-old conservative kids accompanied by their teachers would ever treat an 85-year-old senator or not so condescendingly. When you send your child to college, you are not just playing Russian roulette with their values, you are playing Russian roulette with their character and the way they will treat you. Left-wing parents do not have a similar worry. If their child somehow returns home from college a Christian or a religious Jew, not only will they not be treated with contempt, they will probably be treated with even more respect than before. Leftism makes you worse. Judeo-Christian religions make you better. That might not be the fashionable view, but it just happens to be true. Gee, I was only going to read a sentence or two, and it was so good I had to read the whole article. Guess who wrote that article?
Let me think. Walter Williams?
No.
No, let me think. I have seen it. I have seen that.
A Clue, a KSCO talk host. No, wait a minute. A KOMY talk host.
No, I just can't.
Dennis Prager.
Oh, Dennis Prager, of course.
Yeah.
I should have guessed
and
that.
The word, I decided I was going to, just on a real long shot, put the word out to Dennis Prager to maybe join us on this program.
Yeah.
And he wasn't available, but I think he likes the idea very much. And maybe at some point in the future, since we are an affiliate, and you can hear Dennis Prager from 9 a.m. to 12 noon, Monday through Friday, opposite Rush on our sister station, KOMY AM 1340. Anyhow, how do they get away with it? With tipping the scale so much in favor of one increasingly extreme point of view?
Well, it's been a long business of packing the faculty with radical leftists. It took 50 years to do. But the other thing to remember is that when you made a distinction between leftists and liberals, which is absolutely right.
In the article, Dennis
we are dealing with the radical left, with a segment of the left, a harsh...
starting to eat into our Congress, actually.
Yeah. Well, there's no doubt that the poisonous political atmosphere that's increasingly nationwide comes from the campuses. I mean, the intolerance, it leaks out. On campus, certain views are banned, completely banned. Now, that intolerance is, as I would have said 20 years ago, that was characteristic of the campus, but not of the wider world in the country.
Yeah.
Now, it's leaked out into the wider world. So it's a very dangerous thing. But remember that once you get a one-party campus, you're bound to get an extreme culture, because if there's only one type of opinion around, it'll automatically get more extreme, because it has nothing to push back against. I mean, there's no discipline involved. There's no enemies. There's no opposition. So if you've got two parties disagreeing with each other, they'll keep each other healthy.
Right.
If one says something that's really stupid, the other will pounce and clean it up. So both keep each other clean and well ordered. Take away the discipline of the other party and just have one party. It'll get sloppy. It'll get more stupid, more extreme, more ridiculous, more vicious, more intolerant, and that's what we've seen. That's what we're seeing now.
We have a caller, Dean in Santa Cruz, who we are going to put on the air right now. Dean in Santa Cruz, I think this might be the Dean I know.
Hi, MZ. This is Dean Sutton, Law of the Land.
Yeah, and we can love you. We can like you anyway, even though you're a lawyer. Right. Yeah. Okay.
I have a question for the professor. I've seen what he's talking about. I graduated from UC Santa Barbara in 1974. And I saw and see a big change. I've taught in junior colleges and Santa Clara University, but never the UC system. Question: how come it is the change caused from the campuses out into the society, or is it caused from the society into the campuses? California has become almost a one-party state.
Good point, Dean.
Since we had Earl Warren, long time of Republicans. After the 60s, I don't know what has happened. Where are the legitimate, honorable, conservative Republicans in California?
Well, look, your question is the causation. Does it go from the society to the campus or the other way around? I think it goes from campuses to society. As the campuses have gotten more intolerant, the political atmosphere on campus has become more poisonous. That has got exported to the general society. Now, we used to think of California as uniquely blessed in having a wonderful system of public higher education, right? We've got the University of California and you've got the state colleges. Now, if you look at the districts that elect people to the assembly, to the California Assembly, you can see one thing. Any district that has a major University of California campus or a state university college campus, any district that has one of those in it goes automatically left. Now, we have 20 or 30, how many? More like 35, I think, total. That's a lot of districts that are automatically left. Now, any district that's automatically left is going to have a tendency to extremism, because there's no discipline. Where you have no opposition, you have no discipline, there is a tendency towards slackness, foolishness, and extremism. And that, I think, is how we come to have a legislature in California that is a sort of leftist fantasy land. It doesn't have any effective opposition.
But the entire state, for some reason, since the 60s, has, I don't know if it's a reaction to Nixon, or a lot of people just turned from the traditional honorable Republican Party?
That's a big question, a big separate question. But as I say, I've no doubt the campus is a very big part of it.
I know Cal State Bakersfield was the only university started when Reagan was governor, and it is, you know, it's in Bakersfield, one of the most conservative places in the state, probably in the country, and it came into being. It was the last city in the United States over 100,000 people that didn't have a four-year college of some kind within 100 miles. It was literally the last vestige of the prairie or the, you know, no civilization. And when it came into town, that really did bring in a lot of, quote, liberals and things into that area. It was very very funny in a way to watch this clash of cultures. It's sort of a microcosm for what you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, no doubt that the campuses do produce a leftism that's more left than was, you know, found in the society at large.
Yeah, but you're not talking about just liberal or conservative. You're talking about radical, really radical.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, the nationwide climate with regard to, say, the idea of socialism. Now, that has changed radically in the last 20 years. I mean, there's much more support for the idea of socialism.
It's changed radically in the last couple of years.
Yeah. Well, I would say that I mentioned earlier that study done in 2018 of various national institutions. That study found that the public confidence in higher education had dropped more than with any other national institution. But there's no
part of that is because it becomes so silly. I mean, you can get a master's degree in consciousness or something at UC Santa Cruz. Not exactly your best marketable skill. I tell kids when I talk to them, everybody needs to develop a marketable skill. You have to develop some skill that people will pay you money, something that you do, whether or not you're a doctor, a lawyer, Indian chief, you know, if you're a plumber or you do HVAC, you need a skill people will pay for. And the colleges, of course, are not supposed to be trade schools or universities, but still they should have some modicum of value. Some when you come out of it, you should be a little bit better than when you went in.
Now, who can argue with that? Who can argue with Dean Sutton? I can't. No, and I don't think anybody can. Hey, Dean, great call. Thanks for calling in, and you do a wonderful program, even though you are an attorney.
Yes, indeed. Talk to you later.
Take care. By the way, Dean's program, Law of the Land, is on Thursday evenings between 8 and 9 p.m.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Okay, next caller is Carrie in Live Oak. Question for the professor. Hey, Carrie.
Hello, Professor. I'm a graduate of the California educational system, and I also had an opportunity to study abroad and in Germany and in France, and I was a radical left-winger for my youth, and then I changed as I finished my education here in California, funnily enough. What I find is today, even my son, I'm in my 70s, my son is in his early 30s, he is totally becoming mono left-wing and won't discuss anything and debate anything. He Google has programs, as I understand, which he's on the web all the time, that feeds you more information about whatever it is you are doing, and you become more and more mono everything. You think mono, you pursue mono interests, and they focus you down to being just a consumer of whatever it is that you like.
Yeah.
Well, and it's happening everywhere, not just on the campuses. Indoctrination is going on 24/7. all around us.
Yeah. Well, look, when you have a one-party campus, which is what you have, you have not only radicalism being taught in the classrooms, but you have a culture on the campus that is oppressive. I mean, that if kids want to start to think for themselves and challenge this, they're not only going to have to challenge in the classroom with their professors, but they're going to have to, they got to deal with the culture all around them that's hemming them in the whole time. An awful lot of them just shut up and don't say anything.
I actually had tried to have a debate about bees, what was happening with bees, and because I'm into nature and I'm a nature watcher, and with a university professor who was at the library and giving information out, discussing their approaches. She had no open mind whatsoever, and basically she had her mind all made up about what was going on, and they were basically trying to indoctrinate the public at the public library.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about what can and should be done to stop this. But let's take some other callers first.
Okay,
Terry, thank you for calling 479-1080. Next caller will be Art in Prunedale about left-wing progressives or progress. Go ahead, Art, you're on.
Yes, thank you, MZ. I'm sorry you missed the first half hour. Dave not only did an outstanding job filling in for you, but the professor went over a lot of background material.
I plan to listen to that because everything is recorded.
Good.
Yeah, so
good. Well, I did my master's thesis on this exact same topic in the late 1980s, early 1990s.
Wow.
And I went back and I researched what it was like to grow up in the 60s, from 1960 on, before Kennedy was assassinated. And that was a big turning point. People lost confidence, people who had grown up in the 50s. We won World War II. This is research. This is not experience. The people who grew up in the 50s were very proud. We were a strong nation. We defeated the Nazis, the Japanese, and so forth. We were a very unified country. Prosperity was abundant. General Motors, Ford, people were moving into suburbia. It was great times. Very patriotic feeling in the country. 1960s come along. Kennedy was assassinated. Johnson took over, increased the Vietnam War, told a lot of lies about the Gulf of Tonkin and so forth. Young people who were born, baby boomers, were now in the front lines in Vietnam. They were coming home. The SDS, the Students for Democratic Society, which was mentioned by the professor, a bunch of small group of radicals. If you think back to that time, from what I researched, it was a small, very well organized socialist communist group. And they decided to follow what Nikita Khrushchev had said back in the early 1950s, we will bury you. And they organized to infiltrate the educational system, the National Education Association, the American Federation of Teachers, the college groups and the educational departments, to foster this disquietude and enhance it to demoralize and depatriotize not only the professors, but as this professor said earlier, to educate the upcoming teachers, that when these people who graduated in the 60s and 70s became school teachers, they were already indoctrinated not to teach students how to think, but what to think. And that's just a short summary of my thesis. I could probably talk for 2 hours, and I'm not going to do that. So, Professor, thank you. You're right on.
Thursday, it's going to be partially cloudy weather across the board with lows in the mid to low 40s. All right, it is 11:06. And before we jump into this program, I figure we should actually play that happy birthday sounder for MC.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Ronnie. Happy birthday to you.
You old fart.
Yay! Wait a minute, shouldn't that be aging flatulence? Wait, we need to do it again.
How old is he exactly?
He's 68 today.
Oh, you are an old fart.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. John says, dang, what does that make him? You know, thank you, Griffin Queener. How in the world did you find that hidden file, that hidden sound file?
I called up Billy and he directed me. So there you go. It was as simple as that.
Oh, good. Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, I recognize those voices and the irreverence. Right. You can't get any respect around here, even as the owner. But the cool thing is that it was the thought that counted.
Absolutely.
And it's a week late, but we could play it every Saturday. Let's change the Good Morning jingle to that.
Sure. Sounds like a great idea.
All right. But here we have to do the hour 2 jingle here. By the way, everybody who's on the phone now, stay there. No, I mean, I don't mean just stay there and just hang there. We will get to you, I promise, okay? And I think the board is just about full. I think we might have space for one more caller at 479-1080. It's a very, very interesting topic that's really touching a nerve today.
Oh, hello, darling. I hate to hang up on you, but I'm sorry, baby, but I have to go. It's time for that wonderful record show. I'd love to visit, but you'll have to call back. KSCO has the inside track.
Yes, and we're going to use the second hour to continue to dwell on the 68th anniversary of my... I'm only kidding. God, what an ego.
I'm sorry, baby, but I really gotta go to KSCO Radio. Bye.
By the way, where are all the emails today? We have one from Bob in Carmel that came in quite a while ago, actually, at 10:36. I was here. Remind your guest in the subject line. It was in 1965 that the government guarantee of student loans program started. What a coincidence! That's from Bob in Carmel. So, thank you, Bob, for bringing that up. I think our next caller is on the air with us now, Steve. Stephen Aptos, about the 60s. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, Michael. One thing I want to add about the 60s, when the student unrest started, like at Berkeley and Penn State and a few other universities, some of the quiet behind-the-line leadership of that were the people who fled from Hungary and Czechoslovakia. And they were over here as professors and stuff. And they told the students, there's a trend going on here where we're headed for socialism and your votes aren't going to count. Corporations and banks are taking over and they're getting in government, Congress, senators, or even president by backing them. And that's one reason why the student unrest was so successful, because we had these professors at the universities teaching from Czechoslovakia and Hungary who saw the Russians take over their country there. And so anyway, the government sort of sat back and said, look, it's not time for us to do this. And here we are 50 years later where it's happening. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that in.
What do you think, Professor John, about what Steve just brought up?
Well, there was a two-edged thing. I mean, some of those people who fled from those countries were staunch supporters of America and free markets, and some weren't,
There's a pregnant pause. Why? Maybe Steve is gone. Anyhow, our next caller, we'll go to our next caller. Thank you, Steve, for bringing that up here. That next caller will be Dick in Santa Cruz about social justice warriors. Dick.
Yeah. Hey, once again, great Saturday special. Professor, I wanted to just ask you what you think the end game is here. We just heard from a lady, her family she can't even talk to her son. We just heard on the news how the yellow vests are fighting the elitists in France. we hear it on the news that the Muslims are being locked up in China, and not to worry, they're locking them up for their own good, to get them out of poverty. What is the end game in all of this? Is it we got a one-party campus? Are we going to have a one-party world? Is this breakdown of society and families and church? Is that what this is all for?
Well, that's a really heavy question. I mean, how does this go? First of all, I mean, public confidence in higher education is dropping. It's already dropped a lot. It's going to continue to drop. There's already been a substantial drop in enrollments in higher education, something like about 10% in the last, I forget the exact time frame, about 10 years. Now, that's a big drop. That tells
Isn't that ironic, though?
Well, it tells you that parents and students are getting fed up with what they're getting. They know they're not getting what they...
You have to.
So, and let me give you another statistic. A book by guys called Ehrman Roxa published a lot of studies, one of which showed that 45% of people who graduate from four-year colleges see no increase whatever in their abilities, in their linguistic ability, and the ability to reason or calculate or understand complicated texts. So, in other words, that research by leftists, by the way, shows that almost half of students don't benefit one bit by going to college. Now, that's
are they getting angry or?
No, that's not sustainable, right? I mean, this knowledge of this is spreading out into the campus, into the outside world, and campus enrollments are dropping. Now, the other thing is that societies, state legislatures certainly contribute a lot of money to fund state universities. Sooner or later, that money is going to be in question. You can't go on doing this with one-party campuses.
What do you mean?
Well, look, state legislatures...
What do you mean in question?
Not all state legislatures are like California's. Some are actually dominated by right-of-center people. They're not going to keep on giving vast amounts of money to one-party campuses to preach radical leftism.
If it's a one-party state like California is, it will.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. No, we're condemned to this for some time. But I would expect that the combination of parents seeing that nothing good is happening, state legislatures seeing that a lot of money they're contributing to higher education is wasted, sooner or later has to have some impact.
I hope so. I mean, I pray so, because the dysfunction, I mean, I just watch these hearings where a tweet now is going to be an impeachable offense, and I'm just outraged by the imbalance of our it's in the courts, it's the judges that fight the first true conservative president we've ever had, calling him a racist because he wants to close the borders, because he wants some, sovereignty for us all. He wants, some jobs for us all, calling him that. I hope you're right, Professor. I hope we might be turning, but that really wasn't my question, but that's all right.
All right. Well, thank you for calling 479-1080. Appreciate it. Rory in Watsonville.
Hi. Hey,
Hi.
Thank you. And Dick, if you're still listening, always remember, talk is cheap. And the left and all those on the airwaves that are bloviating about our great president, they don't make an election.
Why don't they bloviate on KSCO?
Well, no bloviators allowed, right?
No.
Isn't that one of your rules?
No idiots
stupid people.
allowed. No, stupid people are
stupid
not,
people.
Yeah, okay.
But the thing is...
I guess I answered my own question.
Yes, you did. This earlier discussion when Dave Michaels opened the show with Professor Ellis, and thank you for coming on, Professor Ellis. Good to hear you. The essential battle that's happening is the American system for liberty versus the European system for statism. What the Marxism came out of the French Revolution, which was a statist, the state is supreme revolution, where the American Revolution says the individual citizen sovereign is supreme. And that's the difference, and that we have immutable rights given to us by our Creator, where the statist viewpoint is your rights come from the state. They can be conferred, they can be taken away for the better good of whoever, amorphous and or non-amorphous reasons. So that's what we're seeing. And one of the key things that happened in the 60s is the widespread use of mild hallucinogens in the form of cannabis, and then man-made, psilocybin, peyote, and then on to the man-made hallucinogen. It literally brainwashed a good part of a generation.
God, what's going to happen now with it legal?
I know. Well, we'll see. Pendulums tend to swing, all right? And we do have a president that's promoting liberty, which is awesome. And it'll take time. He's got a big Herculean task in front of him, but he's doing it. But I think of the Frankfurt School, going back to what was the influence in academia. Maybe, Dr. Ellis, you could speak to the influence of the Frankfurt School that arrived in the United States, what was it, late 20s, early 30s? Correct?
Yeah. Frankfurt School was basically a statist group, a neo-Marxist group. Sort of second wave Marxism, right? By that time, when the Frankfurt School got into business about the 20s, by that time it was clear that actually the free market system was raising living standards everywhere.
Yes.
Right. So the Marxists had to regroup and rethink, because they couldn't any longer say that living standards weren't rising. So they then started to develop a system which concentrated much more on sort of the notion of oppression of people and so on. Actually, even the material well-being of society, they started to turn on, call it commodification. So in other words, it was... Whereas Marxists originally had wanted possessions to be redistributed equally, the Frankfurt School was somewhat turned on the notion of possessions as, commodities are just a fetish and so on. So this was basically a late Marxist attempt to deal with the fact that Marxism actually wasn't working. By that time it was clear Marxism wasn't working, so they tried to tweak it. They got basically booted out of Europe, and they came to America, and unfortunately they were quite successful in sowing some ideas. But it was the 60s unrest over Vietnam that gave them a toehold, unfortunately.
Yes, and well, thank you for that. One of my older brothers, because I was too young for the draft, I was like the tail end of the baby boom, they said that all the protests, because they were in Southern California, as soon as the draft was stopped by President Nixon, all the protests on the university campus ground to a halt. It was a very selfish, we don't want to go to the war, and as soon as the mandatory draft was done, it stopped. And that's a fact. There was not a lot, there was some ideological opposition to the war, but it really came down to, I don't want to be drafted and my rear end sent over to Southeast Asia to die. But anyway, these things. Go ahead.
But that's a natural human reaction, right?
Sure.
Sure. I don't think we can hold that against. The problem was, though, that big expansion of the university world, 65 to 75, remember, over a doubling of the number of students, and that meant a sudden doubling of the number of faculty. That intake, that faculty intake, the appointments of that 10 years was the worst possible time to have a massive expansion of universities, because you were choosing from alienated people. So you suddenly had a massive influx of alienated radical professors, which diluted the older, really serious scholars.
Right, the classical
really serious,
liberals.
Yeah. And that was a tragedy for the country. The real damage left by the Vietnam War was the fact that it happened just when the baby boomers were hitting the universities, and so you had to. The post-World War baby boom, right, became college age between 65 and 75.
Yeah, and that was the
And
growth.
the tragedy for the world of academia in America was that because of that baby boom hitting exactly the Vietnam era, you had, in fact, a massive dilution of genuine academics with fake academics. And that's the source of our problems.
And we can thank Democrat LBJ for blowing that war up to huge proportions. The other thing, and I'll finish with this. I was at a CSU yesterday with one of my kids that's looking to study there. It's a polytechnic university, so while they do probably have underwater basket weaving or the history of staying awake, as one of Michael's hosts used to call the history of consciousness. I forget which one of your hosts said that. It was very hilarious.
Yeah.
Maybe it was Dag. The history of staying awake degrees, while fine and wonderful, but like one of your earlier, Dean Sutton said, you have to have an marketable skill. You got to be educated where you're going to add value either to yourself in a business or you're going to work for somebody and add value. And fortunately, this university, they still teach the agricultural sciences, and you can't fake it. You cannot fake it in the real world of science, applied agriculture, building, and whatnot. And this is a very strong polytechnic university. So some of the universities are still doing good work, albeit there is definitely more of a PC mindset being forced on campi throughout the state. But anyway, great discussion. Good to hear you. And go to liberty, down with tyranny.
Okay, Rory, thanks
All
for
right,
calling.
guys. Take care.
479-1080. Our next, there's a click I'm hearing that I never used to hear before when we switch between the callers. I guess I'll get used to it. Daddy Bird, you're on.
I wanted to compliment the professor that was on about 20, 30 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Because I studied all this, and I was in the university, and I was in Vietnam, all that other stuff. I watched it firsthand, and he's exactly right. It also had a big change on the media, news media, especially after they kicked Nixon out of office. That went to a lot of people's heads, and a lot of those leftists that were in college in the late 60s kind of went underground when the war was over. And Rory's right about the draft. That's why they were chickens, because they proved it when they all quit demonstrating, once they didn't have to go over there and worry about stepping on a landmine. So I was pretty disgusted by the whole thing, but that professor knows what he's talking about. He was exactly spot on, and I think your guest also knows what he's talking about. And it's just going to get more
I thought you were talking about the
left-wing.
same guy.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah, the
Okay,
guest
well,
is the professor.
He's quite brilliant, and he's right. He's right, and most of those... I was taught by a professor that came here from Russia. He was at the Hoover Institute. He worked for all kinds of spy places and all that. His uncle was the Russian that lost the World War I, Samsonov, General Samsonov. Anyway, we had a lot of emigres here teaching foreign languages, a lot of them from Eastern Europe. They're extremely patriotic, and I learned really early not to get BS by these left-wingers, and they just went under. They're a bunch of liars, and they're for 40 years they've gotten their way, and it's just going to continue as far as I know. So
Well, they're not getting their way with Trump as the president, and that's why they're having nervous breakdowns.
Yeah, but look what he's going through,
Oh, he can handle it. He's doing great. It's horrible, but he can handle it.
Oh, okay. Well, all right.
But my question is, who after 2024? I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that he's going to be reelected with a landslide victory. But who after 2024? Don Jr. maybe. Yeah, maybe he's being groomed. Right? I mean, what do you think? Just a thought here. Daddy Bird, thank you for your call to 479-1080. After this next call, which will be Nick in Royal Oaks about indoctrination, we have a full, no callers. So you and I can talk. There's plenty to talk about, John, but in case those, because I said if we had a full board, we went through it all pretty quick here. So anybody who wants to call 479-1080 and ask a question of Professor John Ellis here, or make a comment, now is a good time to do it. Or you can email mz@ksco.com. Okay, Nick, you're on.
Hey, thanks. Can you find evidence of inoculations as a tool of equalization.
I think you mean indoctrination, not inoculation.
No, inoculation as a tool.
Oh.
And I say,
Okay.
and the autism would be docile.
I'm not sure I'm understanding what you're asking.
Well, everybody's forced to be inoculated. And I'm saying.
You mean vaccinated?
Vaccinated. And would you think? Can you find it as a tool of equalization, of finding everybody easily the same to control, and you'd find the collateral damage of autism just docile?
Well, we're sort of turning away from the subject here, which I'd rather not do. I think that's a fascinating question, Nick, for sure. But I think that's more appropriately discussed on a different program where we can sort of stick to the subject.
Well,
you know,
it's the subject of controlling people. All right.
Okay. Well, he makes a good point. All right. Thank you. Take care. So, what do you think? Do you have any comment about that at all? I mean, I don't think forced vaccinations are a good thing at all. I think it's terrible.
People should always be free to make that choice.
Yes.
Yeah. The link
and for
between
the people who are upset, they say, "Oh, if you're not." Everybody should be forced to be vaccinated. I got this from George Norrie. He's the only person who's ever advanced this argument. He says, well, why should people get upset who want to and have been vaccinated that other people who object to being forcefully vaccinated don't get vaccinated? Because if they've made the choice for themselves and they're immune to the disease. What do they care about the other person? Unless they don't believe that it's a true vaccination against the disease. Anyhow, you understand the point here? I've never heard that advanced by anybody besides George.
Well, the counter argument that's made is that if too many people aren't vaccinated, then a disease can reassert itself.
I guess through the unvaccinated, but not through the vaccinated, unless they don't really believe that. Anyhow, totally different topic for a different time. But, we do have lines open at 479-1080. You can email mz@ksco.com. And if you're outside of Area 831, you'll have to use that area code 831 before the 479-1080. Our next caller will be none other than Carrie in live. Did you call before, Carrie?
Yes, I did, and I like the subject. It's fascinating. One of the things, I loved all the different comments and everything, and I like it that you actually can have people with different views on, and nobody starts getting out sticks and stones or trying to assassinate each other verbally. I really applaud that.
Well, thank you. That's what we're all about, and I think we're just about the only media company left in the world who believes in that.
Right, and that's why I'm trying to participate more, because I have just gotten my voice back after a long illness, and I'm really grateful that you're still on the air. It's one of the few radio or, any kind of media outlet I can listen to without wanting to upchuck.
Oh, my. Yeah, that's not healthy to upchuck, for sure.
No, it isn't.
By the way, while I'm thinking about it, I want to... Rosie came up with a great idea. She emailed it out to the upper management here at KSCO. Apparently, there is going to be a town hall meeting.
Oh, wonderful!
On the topic of homelessness.
Oh, great!
In Santa Cruz at the Veterans Memorial Building next to the post office.
Right.
And Rosie said, "Is this not something that we should Isn't this a perfect thing for us to do a remote live broadcast from?"
Oh, that'd be awesome.
I thought that would be wonderful.
Yeah.
We're gonna do it, and any business that wants to help us do that, it'd be almost nothing for them. They should contact the radio station or contact me, MZ at KSCO, or contact Michael or contact Rosie or contact Dave. If you want to get in on the sponsorship, but we're going to do it anyhow, because that's what we do.
Well, you're community oriented, and that's where everything starts. That's any good.
Yeah.
The corporate world is dominating through artificial intelligence at this point, and the reason I know is because I have spent 30 years in Silicon Valley on leading edge of technology. That's what my career was. And I commuted for 25 years. And I have the School of Hard Knocks to prove it. I mean, I have residual mercury poisoning from secondhand soldering, for example, in the labs, okay? And I fought that and got screwed by Hewlett-Packard, by the best of them. But that's another story. The main reason I'm talking now is because artificial intelligence and robots, there's no jobs for people anymore. The technology is all about eliminating workers that cost money. And the system, the people that are in the university system are acutely aware of who their paychecks come from. And their research and their books get bought by or provided the funds to research for. That it's all what I call the vested interests of I really loved your alcohol program about gas and alcohol, for example, because, see, that's the kind of revolution we have to have at the grassroots to have any power for the people anymore. Right now, it's power to the automation. I got to go.
Okay, thank you, Carrie. Now, John, what about the notion of AI professors that can be programmed to be, fair and present both sides and be open to both sides?
You mean artificial?
Robotic professors. Why not? I mean, it's coming everywhere else. Why not there?
Well, I take it what you're really talking about is using the internet to get an education, right?
No, robots. You know, I've heard it be said that you don't have to. It's good that Trump is doing, things with the tax laws and stuff like that make American companies want to come back to America for their manufacturing activities and so forth. But I've also heard it said that as AI, artificial intelligence, becomes more prominent and polished, I guess, and better, then you don't have to go to countries that have much lower wages to have your labor, because the labor is going to be done by robots increasingly.
Yeah.
So why can't the teaching be done by robots?
If the robot is complicated enough, it would be fine. But look, I mean, what I was really want to talk about was just that these days with the internet, instead of going to college, you can sign up for a course on the internet and get a brilliant professor give you a wonderful course of lectures, and you pay very little for it. You don't have to go to college and get into debt. You get a first-rate education.
That could be a wonderful business opportunity for lots of people.
If once parents and students are wise to the fact that they're not getting from college campuses what they should be getting,
they're not getting education; they're getting indoctrination.
That's right.
Some people might want to be, or not mind being indoctrinated, though.
If you look hard on the internet, if you want a course in American history, you can get a first-rate one. Absolutely first rate, for very little expenditure of money and time, and you don't have to go into debt, mortgage your future. And, these wonderful opportunities are available now. Now, that's why I think that over time, college numbers are going to go down, because people are going to start to realize there are better opportunities.
Yeah, it's just like... when I was growing up, I remember my father saying, the best investment is always good commercial property, commercial real estate. And most of my life, that was true. I don't think it's true anymore, because there are too many people, there are too many vacancies in commercial. We don't have very much commercial. We just have the Capitola Mall. That's like nothing. It's like a drop in the bucket compared to, real commercial space like in over the hill and in the Bay Area and so forth. But even a lot of those places out at Capitola Mall are vacant. It's scary. But and more of those are being converted to what there is a shortage of, and that's housing. Yeah. Build, baby, build. And I think on that town hall meeting that is going to take place on Tuesday evening for between 6 and 8 p.m. that we will most likely broadcast. I will just say we will broadcast it because, no matter what happens, we'll find a way. If we don't have the right audio path, we'll figure out a different one. Because I think that's the kind of thing that we need to do. That's our job, man. As a station that cares about and serves its community. I never thought I would see the day when commercial property is not as great as it's not as great as an investment. So much of it is now vacant.
Well, retail is.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff Bezos, and thank you, the internet. Yeah, and people. I would much rather go to Costco and touchy-feel things, rather than just buy exclusively from a photograph on a website. But that's just me. I guess younger people are the opposite. Yeah. They don't want to be bothered with parking or taking time to go somewhere when you could just get it on, just go to your app on your smartphone where you do just about everything else. Yeah. Okay, next caller. Let's do Casey here. The only Casey I know.
Hello, Michael.
Hi, Casey. The only Casey I know. You're on the air.
Dr. Ellis, do you have any thoughts on how the rewriting and reevaluation of history, of American history, has led to the indoctrination of students?
Well, yeah. I mean, the American history as taught now on college campus is a national disgrace. I mean, look. You look at the broad sweep of American history. The one thing that any historian ought to be struck by was this is in 1750 an insignificant, very in world terms, totally insignificant collection of a few colonies. Right now, fast forward 250 years. It's the most powerful country on earth, militarily, economically, culturally. Now, that 250-year rapid rise to preeminence in every respect is something any genuine historian ought to be struck by. Your attention would zero in on that. How could that possibly have happened? Now, I guarantee you, if you take a course in American history on a college campus, you'll never get that question asked. Never. Instead, what you'll get is, well, the Founding Fathers, they were really racists, and so on. I mean, the really significant questions, I mean, the way in which America led the way to modern life, which is, I mean, historians ought to have their attention engaged by what's really distinctive, right? You look at 20 different countries, you think, what factor distinguishes one of those from all the others? Well, in America's case, it led the way to modern life, and it rose from insignificance to preeminence in the world in an astonishingly short time. Now, if you're a real historian, that's where your attention goes. But the historians on the modern campus, what their attention goes to is they want to prove to you that America's corrupt. And they want to prove that to you because they want to transform it. They don't. So, in other words, the notion that a successful country is a hazard to them. What their agenda is total economic and political transformation of the country to their model, something more socialist. And the notion that what happened already in the last 250 years was wildly successful by not being socialist, that's a problem for them, which tells you they're not real historians, right? They're not interested in real historical questions. They're interested only in their political agenda.
What a fascinating answer. That's incredible. Do you have any thoughts on the movement to try and brand the Civil War as not being about slavery?
Well, that's been going on for many years. Well, I mean, my earliest memories of American history, 50, 60 years ago, was that there was already debate on to what extent was it an economic issue between North and South, different economic systems, and to what extent was it a moral crusade about slavery. So that argument's going on for a long, long time. I think the majority view is that it was about slavery.
Yes.
Always has been.
But on the left,
the radical view is it was about economics.
Correct.
Thank you, the only Casey I know, for calling 479-1080. Appreciate it. Our next caller is Sean in Live Oak. You want some example, or you have some examples of indoctrination?
Yeah, well, I'm talking about the professorship indoctrinating themselves, and I wish I could remember the names of the people who did this study, but it was basically a group of professors decided they would basically set a intellectual trap for one of the women's studies journals, and they presented a story that dogs humping in the park leads to patriarchy, and the journal actually published it. So it's like, and they're, I wish I could remember the names of these people. The tips are
there were three of them. Yeah.
And they were actually just laughing their ass off.
Do you remember the names, John?
I don't remember the names. Bogosian was one of them, and they're at Oregon State, I think. Yeah, they sent out about 20 articles actually, and about 7 of them got accepted, and they were parodies. And what they wanted to prove was that this sort of scholarship, so-called scholarship in the humanities and social sciences on university campuses these days is nonsense. And so they wrote these parodies, wildly funny parodies, and 7 of them got published in apparently learned journals, which I think they made their point.
Yeah, and that's the sort of self-corrupting feature I find about these departments in colleges now is that they're self-corrupting, and what they have to provide to everybody is just more corruption.
Well, let me give you a question. Let's take political science departments, right? Political science departments deal in ideas like socialism and conservatism. Now, imagine a political science department in which not one single professor is right of center. Now, actually, that's most political science departments right now. But imagine that. What sort of people, what sort of professors want to be in a department where you don't have a single voice representing one half of the spectrum of political ideas? Now, to the neutral onlooker, that looks like a completely incompetent department, right? I mean, they shouldn't be allowed to give bachelor's degrees in political science because they're incompetent. They don't have the kind of manpower you need to teach a competent course, a competent course of studies. But that's the situation on campuses right now. And if you raise the question with any of those campuses, how do you think you're competent to teach political science when every single professor is left of center? You just get a sort of bemused stare. No one wants to answer you.
Well, it's the old thing is that they really talking about diversity, but the one diversity they won't promote is the diversity of ideas.
Yeah. And that issue, I mean, to me, that's flagrant incompetence. That's all there is to it. A department that does not have a single professor out of, say, a dozen or 2 dozen who's right of center and wants to be called a political science department is utterly incompetent. But you can't get the campuses to recognize this fact.
Not only incompetent, it's wrong.
Yeah.
Well, it's also elimination of checks and balances. You have none, so if you're going off on the wrong course, there's nothing to ever to check you.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. Well, gee, thank you for Sean for calling 479-1080.
Okay, bye.
Appreciate it. There goes Sean. William H. Lyons sends an email with the subject Fabian socialism. Are you familiar with that term? Okay. What you're talking about has a name, Fabian socialism. It was founded in the 1880s in England. George Bernard Shaw was an early member. It was named after the Roman Emperor Fabian. He was famous for long raids up to 20 years. He'd move so slowly, people began to write him off, and then he'd strike like a snake. I believe he was always successful. The new Fabians adopted that philosophy of a very long takeover. They taught their members to start small, like with the school boards and city councils, and gradually move up. It's the same process with the universities. Their process seems fairly complete now, unless enough of us wake up and throw these criminals out of office and out of the universities. Oh, interesting email from William H. Lyons. Thank you, William H. Lyons. Okay, next caller will be George from Hollister. Hi, George from Hollister. How you be?
Good. How are you doing, Michael?
Great, thank you.
Listen, I appreciate this show. This is a great show. I would like to maybe step back a little bit, though, and find out if guest thinks that it is possible for public education to be compatible with a free society.
Yeah, you get that, John. There, George, your cell phone is breaking up a little bit, but I think we.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Let me move around a little bit.
Yeah, go ahead, John. What do you think?
Not sure what the question is.
Oh, he wants to know if it's possible to have a free. Restate the question. I thought I got it, but are you there, George? George moved around so that his phone is no longer cutting out. It is gone. So I'm so. Oh man. Okay, George. Sorry. Next call will be Giormo.
Hello? Close enough.
What is it?
Guillermo.
Oh, Guillermo. I met Guillermo on the phone yesterday. Yeah, our call screener, I love Griffin Queener, but he doesn't know how to spell worth a damn. But I still love him. You know, everybody does. He's got the great set of pipes. I'm going to try to make a deal with him so I could buy his pipes, you know, his voice. Anyhow, Guillermo, you're in the radio business too yourself, I understand.
I am, yes. I'm a station owner and operator and on-air talent as well.
That's fantastic. Okay, so you've been hearing our program. Are you listening online or on the air? Because you can hear us in
online.
Okay, so here you are. Do you have a comment about college education? I think you do.
Absolutely. I kind of have three quick comments, and my first one is, you know, I think as conservatives we're giving a little bit too much credit for the universities and colleges being able to shape, you know, political minds. That's my first comment. You know, as conservatives, you know, we're always bashing on, oh man, it's these liberal institutions that are doing it. And the reality is, does it contribute to some? Absolutely. But in the grand scheme of things, you know, before these kids get to college, I think their mind has already been, you know, made up. They've already been formulated. My second point is, you know, we're assuming that, you know, all these youngsters are getting to college and man, they're just cracking books. You know, they're not even going out to party. They're not drinking. I mean, they're just all sitting around in the cafeteria and at Starbucks just talking about political thought and political theory. And I mean, come on, your average college student just doesn't care. I mean, they're there, they're going to regurgitate, they're going to memorize, they're going to pass a test, and they're going to move on. So that's my second point is, you know, a lot of these college students, I think, just want to get in and they want to get out. And my last and final point is, you know, and the reason why I know this is because, you know, I was a college student myself. I went in, I was a Democrat.
When?
And by the time when? 2003. 2003 to 2003, 2007, college, and then I did law school from 2007 to 2000.
Doesn't really count. No, the fact of the matter is, it's a different world. The college campus you describe, your experience, a different world from the one of, say, 40 years ago. Believe me, students did not spend all their time partying. The point is this: if you sit through boring lectures with people ranting at you with the same dull political message day in, day out, you're going to soon lose interest and you're going to go and party. But if you were at Stanford doing that core course on Western civilization in about 1970, you cracked the books because you had to stay alive. You'd flunk out if you didn't. People worked damn hard. There's a study done, I forget who did it now, but they found basically that, go back 30, 40 years, people spent 24 hours a week outside of class studying, and the figure now is about 12 hours. So you see, what you're talking about is a consequence of the dumbing down of education by radical politics. The other thing is, to go back to your point about the fact that by the time kids get to college, their minds are made up. Yeah, that's because they've been taught in school, in high school, elementary school, by people trained on the one-party campus.
I think you're giving them too much credit. I think it also has to do with the environment as well. I don't think they go to school and that's the only place where they're going to get politically, indoctrinated.
No, of course not. The general culture, of course, is influenced by education at all levels. But the fact of the matter is there is a degree of indoctrination in high school and elementary school that, again, was not there 30, 40 years ago. And the reason for it is because university professors train those teachers.
Yeah, no, I see where you're coming from. I respect your opinion, Doctor.
Okay.
There's a wonderful book by Rita Kramer called Ed School Follies. You should read it. On the education of high school and elementary school teachers. Rita Kramer, Ed School Follies. It's an expose of how social justice had taken over as the main aim of ed schools already 30 years ago.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks for calling, Guillermo. Nice to hear from you. Downtown Al.
Hey.
Do you have is it true you have a liberal thought?
I have both liberal and illiberal.
Okay. You're on the air on KSCO.
No, what I've observed is this sort of thought hadn't been able to make inroads into the harder sciences until recently. For example, if you were into chemistry or physics or whatever, there's kind of some immutable laws out there in the universe that you can't argue too much against. And, a recent example was, one of the colleges that I was at there were a bunch of these stickers that were going out that would advertising that this was a safe space. And the professors are supposed to put them up on their office doors as if there were a bunch of, cis white males lurking out there to chase down and club, anybody who was of a different sexual, preference. And I noticed that they went up in the sociology areas or anthropology or, political science, et cetera. But they didn't go up in the chemistry buildings, the biology building, the, human anatomy, et cetera, engineering. But I have started to see we've started to see things lately, for example, where, a male can now declare that they're a female and is allowed to compete against, women in sports, even though, that trans male obviously has greater muscle mass, heavier skeleton, whatever else, and, dominate against these true biological females. So I'm wondering what the professor thinks in terms of is this a bulwark in terms of that's going to stay in terms of the true sciences going to be resistant to this, or are they going to fall too?
They're not going to be a bulwark. They're already being corrupted. The radicals are going after the sciences too. Look, the thing first thing to look at is the distribution of faculty. Already about 20 years ago, the humanities and social sciences were getting close to 100% radical left. but the sciences weren't. So the overall campus ratio was about 8-1. Now, it has gone from 8-1 to about 12 to 14-1 since then. Now, since 20 years ago, the humanities and social sciences were already saturated, right?
Right.
Where can that increase come from? There's only one place, the sciences. And there is now a certain amount of evidence that the papers published in scientific journals are nowhere near as reliable as they used to be. It was a study done.
No, really?
Yeah. Study done by very...
How can that be? This is science. It's
No, no.
just the laws of science.
Study
are
done
laws.
by...
Can't be violated.
No, there are studies done recently by major figures in the science world who found that a major proportion of scientific studies published are nonsense. I know that's a shocking result, but this is what you get. What I'm saying is this. If you have a largely corrupt campus and you think that one little island, the sciences, can stay uncorrupted in the middle of a sea of corruption, you are sadly wrong. That cannot happen. Over time, they must...
Downtown now, I'm sorry, John, we have a couple of other callers. We want to see if we can get both of them on the line because I promised that we could, but that was when people were waiting before.
Oh,
thank you, Downtown Al.
Thanks
Appreciate
a lot.
it. Okay, Rob in Aptos, colleges today. You're on, quick.
Hey, good. Good conversation today. My question is, how do we transition this time? How do we people with particular values take back our social mountains, let's say, that we've let be co-opted, whether it's family or churches or our schools or our government or our businesses, media. How do we
Okay, yeah, got a quick answer, John?
Well, I mean, you've got institutions like higher education that have had a great deal of prestige for a long time. Now, that prestige still lingers on as those institutions are getting more and more corrupt. The question is, will the public be able to see through these prestigious institutions they had respect for at one time? Will they be able to understand they're going sour? And it is a question of what public opinion will finally do. Now, I'm much encouraged by the fact that study that says that recently the public has lost a great deal of confidence in higher education. That ought to continue, and if it continues far enough, finally...
It'll happen automatically, yeah. Probably. Hey, apologies to George and Hollister. Presumably he got a good phone, but it's too late. God, it's the end of the show. Griffin Queener, thank you for doing a great job. Thank you for coming in, John. We've got to have you on again.
Thank you for having me.
Great. And so I think I do have the correct outro, the correct jingle that should start, I'd say, right about now.
That's all, folks.
You're listening to KSCO. 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 You're listening to KSCO.